Good morning, everyone. You have been listening to products, technology for the last 1.5 days. But what makes all of this work together? What is it that is important from an execution and a delivery perspective? I know many of you have had varied experiences with our implementations, with our execution. And as part of this presentation, I would like to set some context to our journey and how we have evolved as an organization. What is it that did not work for us, and some of what is working today. So over to the presentation. It's not. Yes. 2009, Delivery Excellence 1.0. I think the visual says it all. What we had at that point were complex processes running into volumes, difficult for teams to comprehend and to connect. The processes were definitely elaborate, but we were not connecting to the customer business. 2013, Delivery Excellence 2.0. We went ahead with the L0, L1 architecture for domains that Arun referred yesterday. We applied the same framework to our process architecture also. So we came up with an L1 process design. What I'm showing you here is for the lending product, but we did something very similar for our process design. What did this achieve? Coverage, completeness, but there was still something missing, and that was speed. We were still delaying on our implementations, and we had a problem. So we had to find out where we were going wrong, and we went back to design thinking, the 3 laws that we saw yesterday. Design law 1, where less is more. So we wanted to understand whether we were overdoing something. Design law 2, where the last 2% is 200%. Design law 3, which is the theory of 1,000, 100, and 10 gram. So were we prioritizing right? Were we looking at the right things? And that's where we went back to the drawing board. We went back to the first definition of design thinking because we had a problem on our hands and we had to demystify that. So this was all about demystifying and looking at or coming up with heuristics and algorithms. So what did we do here is we did not go about making any incremental changes to our entire methodology. As Brett King mentioned yesterday, if we had to make a lasting impact, we had to actually throw out what we had. And while that created a lot of anxiety in the system, but that's actually what we did. We actually threw out the processes that had served us for close to 2 decades, and that was something that was pretty revolutionary. And we came up with a new framework that we built grounds up. And here, what we looked at when we did a deep diagnostic was we had 2 problems. The first problem was the format of the methodology itself. It was too procedural, it was too prescriptive. And so therefore, we realized that we had to change the format completely. And that is when we simplified it into a set of business rules, a set of handful of business rules, and you will see how simple we have made it. So that was the first step that we did. And these business rules we ensured were not prescriptive. They were outcome driven. They were action oriented. They were focusing on the what rather than the how. The second problem that we had, the first I spoke about was the format. The second problem we had was the content. So while we had extremely elaborate processes, but the processes were all around software engineering practices. And while that is extremely important, the issue was that we were not connecting to the customer's problems. So we had to look at the content afresh, and that's where the second design thinking principle helped us. So we looked at how were we understanding requirements from the customer, both stated requirements and, more important, unstated needs. The second, what patterns were we observing in our conversations with customers, and what signals were those patterns giving us? The third was connecting the dots, something seemingly unrelated, but they could be very important for us to connect the dots. And fourth, understanding blind spots, not just blind spots within our own teams, but also blind spots which customers could have missed. And what we realized is that the collective wisdom that we as an organization had acquired for close to 2.5 decades of partnering with global customers, all of this knowledge was sitting in some corner of our organization well within us. So we just captured and crystallized all of this into the business rules, and that became the content. So the content of this entire methodology, if you would see, is just a collection or a repository of best practices, common pitfalls, and mistakes that we learned over the years. What resulted in 2016 is Delivery Excellence 3.0. We started with an aggressive program, D-3 OTIF, to reinforce our promise of implementation certainty to customers by looking at not just delivering on time, but becoming more ambitious and saying, let's try to deliver ahead of time. And not just making sure we do that, also looking at in full, complete scope and with quality. So this is the Delivery Excellence 3.0 or the D-3 OTIF. If you notice, the entire methodology is captured in just one slide. So if you relate back to the first slide that I had shown, where our processes were spanning multiple volumes, right, we have now reduced the complexity of this to such an extent that we are able to actually share with you our execution methodology in a single slide with 7 elements, D1 to D7, and that's about it. So this made it extremely simple to relate to, both for our project teams as well as for our customers. So if you notice, the methodology itself has 2 foundational pillars: design, which is all about how do we do on time or D-3 ahead of time delivery, and diagnostic, which is talking about in full and with quality. Now the D elements, as we call it, which determine the in full, we have 3 of them, D1, D2, and D3, and we have 4 elements which constitute the on-time portion, D4, D5, and D6. And each of these elements have sub-elements and further decomposed into the business rules that I spoke about. And so how does it all flow? The first one is D1, which is the most important, which is where we talk about the product walkthrough and the user journeys, and I will elaborate a little bit more on that. And the outcome of the product walkthrough is what flows into the engineering blueprint, which is D2. So the engineering blueprint is all about how do we want to visualize the end state of the customer solution. And it covers both the functional and the non-functional part. In D3, we translate the blueprint into actual execution, right, in terms of configuring the product for you, bulletproof testing to make sure that it is robust, documentation to support, and then deployment. Post-deployment, it's the product support that kicks in, where we have a global support model, and then product upgrades. Aligning to this, we have the on-time segment, which is all about how do we do efficient planning with well-constituted teams. How do we ensure that we continuously monitor the project? How do we have constant connect with the stakeholders? And how do we drive throughput from our teams? So that, in essence, covers all of what we want to do as part of our execution methodology. I will get into one of the elements, which is D1. And here, what I want to specify is, while in the Delivery Excellence 2.0, we had stopped with L1 level. When it came to Delivery Excellence 3.0, we went down to the L2. We realized that we had to go down to further granular level of detailing. And that is where we realized that our implementation has to be not just process-based, but it has to be based on user journeys. And this was a big breakthrough for us, and you will see why I'm saying that. So what you see here is a sample user journey, and the user journey became so critical because the focus of D1 is all about how do we enable our customers to understand our product better. So every business rule in the D1 element is centered around this fundamental principle. So when we look at user journeys, the user journeys play a very important role because they help to contextualize the role-based personas to the various scenarios, and from the scenarios further down to the detailed process steps. So just like the user journeys played a very critical role for us as part of D1, we also have other execution accelerators. And I would be referring to 5 of them which are path-breaking. The first execution accelerator is the product, the PWT with the user journeys. We've already spoken about that. The second is the model bank, which is the product that is deployed on the cloud and it is readily configured and available. The third, integration cartridges, standard integration cartridges that allow seamless integration with core banking and other systems, and that's where we see maximum challenges coming. So these play a very critical role. And so much so that we're able to automatically generate the interface control document or the ICD because of having these standard cartridges. 4, low-code technology platforms. Arun mentioned about a couple of platforms in his address yesterday. These platforms ensure that we have a robust and a quality product. And then the 5th is what we call the TWT, or the test walkthrough. This is extremely important because what we do here is, just like we do a product walkthrough, here we do a walkthrough of the test scenarios that are going to get executed as part of user acceptance, and these test scenarios are mapped to the user journeys. So you have a complete traceability between what was seen as part of the product walkthrough and what is ultimately going to form the repository of test scenarios. And we have a standard ready set of test scenarios that we share with customers, and it has helped to a significant extent because it enables customers to understand the entire flow of the user acceptance process and also better collaboration as part of this very critical phase. And all of this is what I would like to call as the shift left. Some of you may have heard this term. It's quite common in DevOps. But for us, shift left is how are we able to move some of the processes and phases, if you want to call it that, upstream, some of which comes as later part of the implementation. When we take it ahead, we see that it has greatly benefited both our own teams as well as the customers in terms of understanding the complexity of the product as well as the execution cycle itself. And so therefore, shift left has been a very significant agenda for us as an organization in terms of trying to see how we can cut down the implementation cycle time for you and enable you to start experiencing the product much earlier. We went another step further and down to the L3 level. So not just user journeys, but then how do we enable these user journeys using tools? And that's where Confluence plays a very critical role. So you see here how the user journeys are documented using Confluence, and this becomes a collaborative platform between us and the customer. So whatever user journeys we have on Confluence, we have customers who are able to review these user journeys, provide their comments on real time, and we are able to work with them iteratively on the user journey. So Confluence has been another pathbreaker for us in terms of accelerating the way we complete our product walkthroughs. Apart from Confluence, there are other tool accelerators that have also played a very critical role. Confluence, of course, we just spoke about. The other is Jira. Organization-wide, all project teams are deployed and work on Jira, both for development as well as for deployment. We have a seamless integration between Confluence and Jira. So the user journeys that you would see as part of the product walkthrough on Confluence, the very same user journeys actually flow into Jira, and that's what the project teams work on in the form of user stories. And you would be able to have a complete connect between these two tools. Similarly, the third is ServiceNow, which is the global support platform. ServiceNow is also universally standard for support. It is also integrated with Jira. So end-to-end, right from product walkthrough demos up to post-go-live support, the entire methodology is further supported by a complete tool infrastructure that makes sure that the information flows through seamlessly and there is complete connectivity. So where does that leave us in 2017 and 18? You heard Rajesh speaking yesterday about core banking implementation for Nova Bank that took less than 16 weeks. We have DTB implementation done in 20 weeks for GIB. And these are results that our Delivery Excellence 3.0 is actually showing the results, is actually working. We did an assessment of taking two sets of data, implementations that were done prior to the Delivery Excellence 3.0, right, where we did not have product walkthroughs or any of these execution or tool accelerators, and implementations that were done post that. And the data that we see is that the product walkthrough time has actually reduced from 3.54 weeks to 2.24 weeks from a duration perspective, and that's a 37% effort save, both for us as well as for the customer. And the time to market for the product has also reduced from nearly 55 weeks to 29.8 weeks, another 45% effort save for customers end-to-end. And these results have shown to be statistically significant. Before I close, I would just want to add one point. So when we did all of this and brought in the new Delivery Excellence framework, an audacious framework, if I may say, because we don't have another company which has something similar. One worry that was there, especially with our teams, was how do we make sure that we do not fail on any of our global certification standards, such as ISO or CMMI. And what happened was this framework or this methodology was presented at the Global CMMI conference at Washington, D.C. And the people there, the industry experts, were significantly surprised that we could cover or we could have a comprehensive methodology just based on business rules. And this was further validated when we did a CMMI level 5 successful implementation and successful certification in 2017, and we just completed it in 2019. So I think we've had the best of both worlds, both for our own organization as well as for the customer. Thank you.